Okay, so I wanted to make one more video before sort of signing out for the evening. And I wanted to do another sort of musical hot take and album ranking kind of thing. But I realized before I started, I was sort of thinking of bands that I could do that for. And as I hope you've noticed, the only band I have uploaded a video for so far is Porcupine Tree. That band I feel perfectly confident to talk about, start to finish all day long. But when I stopped and looked at the other bands that I sort of listened to, I realized that a lot of them are either no one's going to know who they are, they don't have very many albums to even do a ranking. They're Australian, so chances are, the rest of the world isn't going to pick up on that. Or they're sort of older bands that I really, really like, but they have so many albums that I'd probably have to take a bit more time to put a ranking into that. Bands I'm thinking specifically like Rush and Yes, stuff like that. I know quite a lot of their material quite well, but not all of it. So if I'm going to do those, I do believe that I should take a little more time first. But one band I did think of, and it's going to be a fairly short video because there's only really 5 albums I think to talk about, who I think a fair few of you will know, but are actually Australian, is Silverchair. Um, Now, I have not been an active Silverchair fan for many, many years. They were sort of my favourite band when I was sort of like very early teens. I wouldn't even say they were my teenage angst band. It was kind of like when I was growing up, very, very young, I listened to sort of a lot of mainstream music. And then I think when I was about maybe 6 or 7, I first heard Nirvana and enjoyed that. And then I think I moved on to Silverchair when I was probably about 10 or 11, maybe. Um, I wasn't actually listening because I was a bit young at the time. I wasn't actually listening to them when they put out their debut Frog Stomp. But by the time Freak Show, their second album, came around, I was well and truly entrenched. Um, so, just to basically kick off the ranking, which will pretty much explain to you my points and views on Silverchair. Straight up, number 5, no arguments, worst album they've ever done is Young Modern. I don't think that even needs to be said. I'm sorry to say, guys, I know you were in a bit of a tumultuous time and all that sort of thing, but that is complete garbage. Absolute garbage. You've got maybe 1 or 2 tracks on it that have a slight bit of acceptability, I'm even going to say, and that would be Waiting All Day and Mind Reader, and that's it. The rest of that album is an absolute turd, guys. Sorry, you should have just left it. 0 out of 10. Maybe 1 out of 10 at best. You get no marks for that, guys. And, after you'd been away for a few years and we knew we were going to get a new album, I was excited. I went out and pre-ordered the special edition and everything. And my God, was I let down. That was probably one of the biggest musical letdowns of my life. And being that I had loved everything you'd put out previously for the most part, I was pretty angry. And you guys really lost me there. So Daniel or Chris or Ben, you guys, whatever you're doing these days, I know there was rumor of a new album, or even your solo projects, whatever it is you're doing, it's got to be better than that. And speaking of which, what's with this business that I hear about Daniel Johns writing an entire album pretty much in the style of Caius and then deleting it? That was a pretty shit move, bro. Like, that probably would have been a lot better than Young Modern. Anyway, enough of the trash talk. Let's move on to the good stuff. Number 4, I have to say, it's Neon Ballroom. Now, Neon Ballroom's got some really great tracks, and sometimes it gets really heavy and quite dark. But there's a few turds in there. Mainly, I'm thinking like Paint Pastel Princess. That was awful. But most of it's pretty good. I do find a very underrated track on there is Steam Will Rise. I really like that closing track. The big ones, obviously. But then, there was two more that I really enjoyed. Point of View, that was really good. And there was another one on there. Can't remember the name of it. But yeah, for the most part, pretty good album. But, when it stacks up to the other three, it's just not quite as good. At number three, I'm actually going to put Frog Stomp. Now, here's where we start getting into the hot takes, because a lot of people would say that Frog Stomp is their best album. And it is good. I'm not going to lie. It's really good. Up until track 8. Yes, those first 7 tracks are all pretty damn brilliant. But those last 3 are a heavy drop off. And I mean, credit where credit is due. You guys were, what, 15, 16 when you wrote that material? I'm surprised you got 3/4 of it as good as it was. I would have thought that, you'd have your 3 big hits and the rest of it would be pretty crappy, but it actually wasn't. The only letdowns are really those last 3 tracks. So, no, pretty good job on that one, guys. Good job. But I think a lot of people remember you for your hits, and, I've spent many years dissecting the albums, which is why I put Freak Show at number 2. Which might surprise you, because then those of you who know the band know what my number 1 is. The reason why I put Freak Show at number 2 above Frog Stomp is because I believe that ultimately there's less weak material. There is still weak material on that album, but it is also one of those albums that over time, when I was younger, I used to listen to it. I had the songs that I liked and the songs that I didn't like so much. But now I listen to it as an adult, and the songs that I didn't like as a child are the ones that I really like now. And the ones that I liked as a child, I don't like so much anymore. So, that being said, I think it's pretty overall quite a strong album. If I had to pick a weak track, it's probably Lie to Me. But I mean, that's, you guys were having a real thrash out on that. It kind of has a point. I wouldn't really say there's a bad... If I had to pick a bad track, I'd say it's Petrol and Chlorine. But I mean, I know a lot of people like that, and it does have its place, and it's not bad. It just doesn't sit with my ear probably as well as the rest of the album. But that's not much of a detraction. It's still great. And then that album shaped my early teen years. It really did. Maybe not necessarily for the better, but it did. But anyway, moving straight into my number 1, it's Diorama, which many of you will probably be quite surprised about. But the way this came about was when that album was released, it was pretty sure it was 2003. It could have been 2002, but I'm pretty sure it was 2003. Now, what happened was it came out, and we had the singles The Greatest View and Without You, which I quite liked. I didn't think they were brilliant, but I thought they were all right. And then I think we got 3 more. I don't remember what the third one was, but then the 4th was Love Your Life. And then the 5th, and many people aren't aware of this, was actually After All These Years. Now, all of which, great tracks. And the thing was, I had a copy of it, but I was sort of skipping through it and not really paying attention to the whole thing. And I sat down with a friend one afternoon, very dear friend, and we were discussing Silverchair, and he said to me, no, Diorama is their best album, and you need to go and listen to it for what it is, for the material that's being played. Ignore, whatever else you're into at the moment. Just listen to it and pay attention to what's actually going on there. And when I did, yeah, he was totally right. 100% correct. That album from start to finish, I don't think there's a dud on there. I'd really have to think about it, but I don't. And the other thing that a lot of people don't realise, because they haven't listened to it intently, there's a couple of really heavy tracks on there, like One Way Mule and The Lever. They're just as heavy as any Freak Show or Frog Stomp tracks, easy. So you want a heavy dose, they're there. But then you want to talk about the actual songwriting and skill. Wow. Like, okay, there's a few odd lyrics here and there. Like, this is when Daniel was starting to get a little bit too avant-garde, but he hadn't really broken the level yet. His creative genius was still very much intact. And when I'm thinking of odd lyrics, I'm particularly thinking of Across the Night. I haven't really looked into this, but I get a feeling he's trying to actually tell some kind of story there. But yeah, it's just a little odd. But the rest of the lyrics on the album are great, and I have to say, this album actually has my absolute favorite Silverchair song on it, which is my favorite thing. It's the second last track. Really gorgeous, just absolutely beautiful. Even like, when I first heard Love Your Life, I thought, oh, that's a bit poppy and a bit expletive. But when I paid attention to it, it's actually a brilliantly written song. And to continue into that after all these years is also a brilliantly written song. I think that one might have a few odd lyrics too, but it still kind of works. And everything in between. Great, great album. And it is, as an album, their most solid. As a complete work, it is definitely their most solid album. Freak Show does come in at a close second, but no, Diorama wins, definitely. And it also manages to convey multiple different moods, whereas I find all the rest of their albums are very monotonous in the mood, especially the first two. And in fact, I wouldn't even say Young Modern has a mood. Sorry, it is that bad. And yeah, Neon Ballroom definitely has a bit more of a moody aspect, but it's awfully dark and depressing, and not in a good way like Freak Show and Frog Stomp was. It's like really depressing. I mean, if we look at the history of the band, that's the point when Daniel was seriously suffering with anorexia and that sort of shit. I've got to stop that. So I guess that's reflective in the material. But at the same time, when you went back and listened to Frog Stomp and Freak Show, as much as a lot of it was depressing and downtrodden, it also had that empowering section to it because it was heavy, made you get that aggression out, whereas Neon Ballroom was just sad and depressed. But Diorama, it conveys a full spectrum and different wide range of emotions, and I think ultimately that, in combined with the strength of the musical material, is why it is their best album. I will also give a quick note to the Tomorrow EP, which they put out even before Frog Stomp. I think they were all 14 years old when they wrote that, and I know it's got the old version of Tomorrow, and I think there's another one that they reworked there. But then we've got, oh no, there wasn't, sorry. It was Acid Rain and Stoned, and there was another track in there, and I know Acid Rain and Stoned did not make it onto Frog Stomp. Kind of disappointing, because they're actually both pretty good songs, especially for being written by 14-year-olds. I don't actually remember what the other track was, but for a 4-track EP, written by a couple of 14-year-old Australians, it doesn't get a lot better than that. But yeah, that's my basic sum up of Silverchair. And as I said at the start, I just wanted to do a quick one, but I'm having trouble thinking of bands that I actually feel sort of, I guess, qualified to speak about in this light. But I'll put a bit more thought to it, and hopefully I'll come up with a few more. Just some examples of that issue. I said in the last video that I would consider doing Opeth and Emperor. Now, Opeth I may still be able to do, but if I am honest, I haven't paid attention to the first 2 Opeth albums as much as I should have, nor the most recent 2. I like those first 2 albums, but the most recent material is really starting to drop off for me. And, well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, to be honest, I think their style change of Heritage was when things really went downhill, but then Pale Communion pulled it back a lot. So maybe I need to just spend a bit more time with those albums. And once that's done, I'm confident to talk about everything in between. So we might do Opeth. Emperor, I found, they've only got 5 albums, so I could guess I could keep it short and sweet like Silverchair. And I have one or two throw ups there, but I tend to agree with most people on the Emperor front. But there's more. I'll think about it, and we'll get more videos in the next couple of days. Cheers, guys. Hope you enjoyed.